Okay, welcome back. Invite everyone outside to come back in the ballroom and everyone inside to have a seat. Our last segment of the day is divided into two panels, both related to education, and we put both of them under the heading Business Takes the Lead, because we're really going to be talking about how the private sector is working within public education to improve things for students and outcomes. So our first panel is going to be the marketplace as classroom innovation. We have Patrick Jones, who is the CEO of VOCATIO, and I'm going to let him explain a little bit about what his company does, and Callie Majors, who is a vice president for 3DE Schools, formerly Junior Achievement Academy. And trust me, I've heard a presentation on what 3DE is doing, and you're going to be blown away at how they're going about this and the results they're getting. So Patrick, Callie, come on up, and thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon to you. So my name is Patrick Jones. I'm the founder and CEO of VOCATIO. Actually a 25-year resident here of Atlanta, and just recently moved out to Los Angeles. We've been there for a couple of years. Our lead investor for our company is based out of there, so we're enjoying the less humidity and beach life. But the reason why I'm excited about being here and about letting you all in on the conversations that Callie and I have been having recently today. I met her for the first time, and then on the phone. Education obviously is a hot topic, right? And from a policy standpoint, we spend an inordinate amount of money, right? Significant money on education, because we believe that that investment leads to the range of outcomes that we all want. But I think the nature of our conversation today is going to maybe throw some provocations at you about some of those assumptions and show you where those opportunities for innovation are, both outside the system and within the system. So let me just share a couple things with you about VOCATIO, because this was founded primarily based on the notion that, from my experience as a speaker in front of college kids, having worked in Fortune 500 level companies, having been an entrepreneur, so in some level being a consumer of the work product of education, I can tell you today that relative to what we're spending on it, the quality of kids coming out of school is deficient in a way that I think many of us are not ready to acknowledge. Now, why is that? Well, it's not about academic smarts. If anything, young people know how to follow a syllabus. They've been on a moving sidewalk probably since 8th grade by a lot of well-meaning adults telling them to do this, do that, do this. But by the time they get in front of me for an interview, or for our clients for an interview, they don't really know how to connect what they've been taught in the classroom to the context of what it is I need them to do. They don't know how to connect the attitudes and attributes that I value more highly than what grades you got in math or English or history, to the fact that at the end of the day, I'm really looking for a hustler. I want someone that can take a little bit of data, a little bit of direction, and run with it. I don't expect them to be perfect. I don't expect them to be a perfectly experienced employee, but they got to show me some get up and go. All right, so a couple things here on the slide. So VOCATIO, which is basically Latin for a sense of calling or feeling of suitability for one's career, right? So you might understand I'm a liberal arts major, right? From that standpoint. So our vision in terms of working with young people is to, and particularly with Gen Z, and the framework that Gen Z comes up with, is employment with a purpose. Now I hope I used to be able to say this, and I'm not so sure I represent it, but I'm 50, and so I used to say that as a member of Gen X, I was the generation that just said, you know what, I'll get educated, I'll get a job, I don't really care so much about the job, I just want to kind of get a job, because that's what we do. Inherently, Gen Z has a much higher intrinsic expectation about what they want out of work in a job, right? And so the idea of purpose or alignment is a very important value to them. And it's partly why one would argue that there's a lot of mental health and stress in young people, which is a whole different conversation. But we come at young people specifically with the idea that, hey, listen, you discover your talent, ready your potential, and then find your fit. That there is a job in the marketplace for which you can feel passionate about and purposeful about, okay? So we start with that premise. On the employer side, right, everybody I think is kind of familiar with the employer shortcomings, but on average right now, if you do any level of campus recruiting, on average it's about $5,000 to acquire a student in the campus environment, college campus environment. The little known thing from a business case standpoint as well is that entry-level hiring typically results in 25% mishires. And that's about a $15 billion attrition cost across the system, right? And a mishire is not only a function of the kid interviewed great, he looked great on paper, but when he got here, he didn't quite have the hustle or the things that I was looking for. It's also Gen Z has a higher propensity that if they don't feel a sense of alignment or connection with the job, they'll leave. I was just having a conversation with United Airlines out in California, and that's one of the things that they're suffering with at different areas is that kids kind of like they need a job for a minute, but when they get there and the expectations aren't there, they're leaving. Right? So there's a little bit of a gap there, and it's very costly. My company's been around, this is our third year. We've just recently partnered with a very large nonprofit out of Denver called Global Minded. In addition to our college relationships that we've been building between colleges and employers, we're now starting to extend ourselves into high schools. And so we're looking for partnerships and obviously a self-interest, working with junior achievement as well, in terms of how we can partner to tighten that pipeline between what a kid is being educated on and how they're being prepared and drawing a more tight connection to what the employer is looking for. And giving confidence to that employer that that young person has both the aptitude and the attitude to do the work that they ultimately want them to accomplish. You know, we've fortunately, I've been on Bloomberg TV talking about underemployment. That's one of the hidden statistics as it relates to college kids coming through the pipeline right now, is many kids walk across the stage, but 45 to 50% of them, pre-recession, post-recession, end up unemployed or underemployed. And underemployed means that they end up in a degree or in a job that actually didn't require a college degree, right? And so you can imagine what that wage is associated with that. And based on some research, we know that college kids that come out of school underemployed, their career trajectory is not only impacted in the near term, for that first 1 or 2 years, the economic earning impact can last as long as 10 years. And so in terms of, from a policy standpoint, from an innovation standpoint, what can we do to make sure that the promise of getting a college education leads to a launch level trajectory and not just one where you walk across the stage with your degree and a pat on the back, but now you're still trying to figure out how on earth do I make this thing work, right? We work specifically with, in our audience segment, we work with liberal and creative arts majors because they typically have the hardest time translating a passion for politics or political science or philosophy into an actual functional job role, even though they may have all the aptitudes to be successful in that job role. We focused on first generation kids because they suffer from the deficit of having anyone to kind of translate for them, right? Oftentimes how this whole process of career search works and what the marketplace is looking for. And we also don't focus on just kids going to college. I'm looking forward to looking at Mark Peavy's presentation coming up. But there are a lot of new collar jobs that are pay 50, 60, 70 grand, have a great career track, but kids and their families are not getting kind of unbiased advice about what those paths look like. Right now, what kids tell us they hear is, if you don't go to college, a 4-year college, your life's gonna suck, right? So if you're a self-aware kid and you know that sitting in a classroom is not for you, that you're mechanically inclined, you wanna work outside, you're into machinery, where does that kid get the coaching and the inspiration and the empowerment that he can be tremendously successful in that path as well? We provide some of that content. And then lastly, we've been working a little bit in Los Angeles and in San Diego, working with Opportunity Youth, which many of you know from a policy perspective are the group of 16 to 24-year-olds who are neither working nor in school. So for some reason, they've fallen off the moving sidewalk and now need some way to get back and plugged into the on-ramp of that system. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, this is what we basically do. We interface with universities, different affinity partners. We do the level of training. We provide kind of Moneyball level talent analytics to students, not just so we can show them what careers they might be a good fit for, but on the other side of that equation for employers, if I hire business analysts or research analysts or field technicians, what I'm most interested in is a subset of young people that have the highest set of interests and aptitudes for the role that I'm hiring. Can you give me those kids? Can you introduce me to those kids? And that's where, in the education interface, it's falling down, because we treat all kids coming across the stage, and then we leave it up to the companies and the kids to try and figure out how to find each other. All right, so if you want to show this real quick sizzle video of what it is that we'll do, I'm going to bring Callie up, and she's going to talk to you more specifically about the 3DE schools and some of the innovations they're doing in terms of a school within a school. Then we're going to have a conversation on stage, and what I really want you to be able to feel like, we already got some questions kind of queued up amongst you, but I want you to feel like you can raise a hand. I think Benita or perhaps someone will be walking around, but we want you to feel like you can have an interactive conversation in the flow of what we're talking about. Okay? So if you want to run that video real quick, and then I'll go on to Callie. We'll see if it works. So without further ado, let me bring up Callie. Hopefully you got your foot tapping a little bit. I know rock and roll typically at a public policy forum is sometimes verboten, but it was okay to tap. Come on up, Callie, and share a little bit of the 3DE story, and then we'll get our conversation going.
This is so embarrassing because I'm so short. The entire time you were talking, I kept going back and forth between captivated by everything you had to say and thinking how horrifying it's going to be that the mic's at my eyesight. So I apologize for that. When I first got here, the very first thing Benita said to me was, "You're a lot shorter than your headshot." Yeah, think about when I go into the schools all the time. But I digress. So we really do want to get into a conversation to talk about this, because just like in school, we do recognize that having open dialogue and conversations is the best way that we can all really be able to take in the conversation we're talking about, and you're able to really internalize it and translate it back into a lens that's from your perspective. So I'm going to be quick, but what I do want to do is provide you all an understanding of what are the tenets or principles of 3DE. And within that, green.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Oh. We'll see if it comes up. But within that, really the basis of where it started off, I thought I'd start with the fact of the quintessential question of how would you describe 3DE in one sentence? And the way I would really break it down is that it's a model to transform public high school education. And within that really short sentence, there's actually a lot of important meaning to take away from that. And that while what we talk about today is a model that has been designed, developed, and piloted here in Atlanta, it's always been since day one, the vision is to be a catalyst to transformation of education. And so every decision we have made from day one has been all about scale and the ability to scale with fidelity to the model. So that's just an important factor to have in the back of your mind as we go through the process. But the basis of 3DE really is built off the shared belief that there is a direct link between quality education and economic opportunity. And At the same time, with the rapid pace at which our economy is evolving, it is difficult for our schools and our districts to be able to keep pace. And so if that we truly want to drive economic mobility through quality education, we need to develop these strategic public-private partnerships that are able to effectively transform high school education and create an equitable access to it so that students are engaging in academics that are more reflective of the real world and create more pipelines to economic opportunity. And so that component is really the basis in terms of the partnerships of what 3D is. It's built off the foundation of a joint venture partnership between our school districts, junior achievement, and the business community. And we all come together through a turnkey framework that allows us to leverage our core competencies and effectively provide our expertise, our resources, and our infrastructure to develop truly a new model for high school education. And when I say model, I really do mean the whole kit and caboodle to what takes place within every single high school. So it's looking at everything from the culture setting within the schools, the teacher resources, support development, the curriculum design, bringing in the real world integration, and the competencies, those soft skills that Patrick was talking about. And it's also about what is the structure of learning that actually takes place for these students. And so all of that really what it comes together to be is this right here. This is the student learning experience. And it's funny, when I was talking with Patrick, he said, I think that's exactly what this model is. And I was like, yes, that's actually the slide I'm landing on. So, because this is truly what is so different about 3DE, is that it takes a high school model that is very standard and silo-based, and actually brings it all together around case methodology. Case methodology is the core of this. Case methodology is historically proven to drive comprehension, allow for application of knowledge, and increase engagement. It makes perfect sense. It's learning through storytelling for students. And the way that we go about doing it is that case methodology is activated through real-world integration. So that component, the cases, become the lever for interdisciplinary pedagogy within our schools, as well as relevant and turnkey business integration. And so what it feels like for our students is that when you're in our traditional high schools, within 3DE, every 5 weeks you get a new case challenge. Think from a high school level, Harvard Business School case challenge. It is activated by a real partner business, and it is helping the students actually solve a problem that the business is facing. So throughout this 5-week period, the company representatives come in, they launch the case, the students work together to do the research, they actually are also coming up with solutions, they then work with business coaches, and they provide a solution back. At the same time as those 5 weeks, they are also within all of their core courses, the English, history, science, math, that sounds right, and the 2 electives, they are also learning through the case challenge. So they're learning through exercises and lessons that link back to this specific case task. As an example, so there was one on tackling diversity recently with AT&T and Cricket Wireless, and so in English class, they were looking at a report and looking at the way that they were presenting their solution and actually doing a SWOT analysis. Is that the right solution to go with? In algebra class, they were looking at linear regressions and looking at the data and deciding between quadratic equation and linear regressions, what's the best way to present the data to actually stand up for your case? And this goes across, and it's a consistent 5-week basis. The way that it has actually launched within our current schools, because we are in our pilot phase in Atlanta, is the school within a school model. And that's really important for this launch, because what we do with the school within a school model is a full immersion experience. What the purpose is to develop a model that can actually transform, not for the students within 3D, but in the broader school. And so what we do for our students within 3DE is they are a mirror match to the host school demographics. And so the only difference for the students in 3DE is the way that they have learning taken. And by doing that, they're able to learn through this interdisciplinary pedagogy. When you start to see the outperformance of our students that are a mirror match, a reflection of the broader school, it dispels entrenched assumptions on student engagement and performance. And that leads to a natural progression to actually dispel and infuse new pedagogies and methodologies within the broader school. So we initially launched in 2015 at Banneker High School in South Fulton. Since then, we have expanded to 6 schools and 4 school districts here in Metro Atlanta. It's Fulton County Schools, Gwinnett County Public Schools, Cobb County Schools, and Atlanta Public Schools. What we have seen between all of those schools is consistent outperformance among our students to their host school peers. But in every single school, it follows this exact same progression. It starts with the transformation in culture and engagement within the schools, and that leads to increased engagement. So you first look at attendance and discipline. It leads to increased performance in terms of academic outcomes. And at Banneker High School, where we're about to have our first graduating class, we are on track to increase, on track to graduation, and has increased by 40 percentage points compared to where it was 4 years ago when we got in there. Equally exciting is the fact that Banneker High School has also increased as a whole in terms of graduation engagement. Up until a few years ago, or last year actually, Banneker High School, even the principal would tell you, it was a revolving doors of administrators and teachers. It was hard to keep consistency within the school. Last year was the very first year that they were 100% staff in terms of teachers, and that's part of that whole culture engagement, letting it flow throughout. So I'm excited to continue this conversation with all of you. I hope you continue to ask us questions. As you look forward, we are in the finalizing our pilot phase. That will end this year, and then we're looking to go into phase 2, which is an expanded pilot, which looks to, in 5 years, be in 55 schools in 7 states. But of those 55 schools, a vast majority of them will be here within Georgia, because we want to be able to show scalability, replicability, and economies of scale that can happen when you do it right here within our home state.
All righty. So let's better position. All right, so you guys can hear me okay? All right, so again, we've had a good long phone conversation and things about this. I think one of the things that you know, I've got a 10-year-old daughter, so at some level I'm a purchaser of education, and I'm thinking like, this is exactly the type of school I want to go to. I think one of the things underestimated as we think about education reform and its dotted line links to workforce is the issue around engagement. You talked about engagement. We still have an old school model, oftentimes, of sit and get really bright teachers. Can you talk to us a little bit about the role that altering student engagement played in the overall design, one, and then two, what rub did you encounter with the teachers and the incumbent education delivery system to kind of adapt to that?
So I would first begin by saying engagement is core. Our belief is that if you can drive engagement, if learning is relevant, it drives engagement. If you provide exposure, it creates motivation, and if there's application, then it's fluency of knowledge. So that is always core to who we are. So when we first did begin, we looked at the whole education system and said, what is missing? What are we as adults not doing that is properly engaging a massive amount of students here in our public school system? And that was what we looked at. Its relevance. School was not fully relevant to them. It was not that the teachers were not caring. The teachers were caring. It's not that it was this subset of students. It's not that at all. It's that school was not being related to or reflective of the world in which these students were living in. And so that's why at the core of the model, and we know that from junior achievement, that's always been the basis of what we do at junior achievement. So by bringing that in at the core of the model, we realized we gave these students a way of learning through experiences that are in brands that they recognize, that they have engaged with, or brands that they've never heard of, but now it's opening up their minds to all these new opportunities and possibilities, as well as these case method through the process of that 5-week consistent changeover. There's a competition element to it, and kids love games. And so they'll even say, because of this cohort model, they become family and friends, but then it's healthy competition. And it's almost, I can't let you win again, so I'm gonna work harder. And so we've heard that over and over again, but it's respectful competition. In terms of any kind of rub we've had?
Yeah, or the change age. I mean, this is obviously a different, you know, you typically hear about this type of innovation in a charter school model or something kind of outside of the traditional education walls, but you're a school within a school. You guys are committed to working within the established school system. Talk a little bit about what that rub has looked like or what friction may be in trying to evolve that model.
Yeah. I will start first at the very top, and it really is about school district leadership. This is a true joint venture partnership. And so what is so important about this is that it is not being pushed on any school district. It is about having the school district leadership that believes in the innovation and is open and willing to this model. And if they are, because they truly are letting us behind the curtain and really getting an inside look. So it begins there. If you are willing to maintain fidelity to the model, we're willing to lean in with you. Then when we go into the schools, we really work very closely with the APs and the principals and our teachers. And so when you look at it within every single school, just like there is a principal and an AP, we have a site director who is equal to an AP, as well as a partnership manager, which is almost equal to a teacher level. And so that creates some friendship, connectivity, and similarity between these two, that you're not coming in to evaluate me or push something on me. You're in this with me. We're a part of this, and now we're peers. Within the teacher hiring process, there actually is not a rub because it is a joint hiring process. So we sit down for every single teacher. Our AP, the AP of the school sits with our site director and interviews every single teacher, but they're looking at them from two different lenses. So the AP is looking at their...
And the AP means the assistant principal, just in case. Yeah, but it took me a while to learn that.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
I live in it too much. So while the assistant principal is looking at this rubric of evaluation on, do you have the expertise in the core discipline? Our site director also has their own rubric, but it's more in terms of mindset and mind share. Do you have this drive for innovative learning? Do you have the drive for flexibility? Do you have the drive to really get in deep? And if you have that, then together, these are the right teachers for it. So teachers do self-elect to be a part of it.
Very good. And again, as we have this conversation, if you have questions, get them up to us in real time. I think we probably got 15 minutes before we transition over. I want to make sure to allow for that. So you talked a little bit about the school within the schools and the change agent. When you think about the results, right? Public policy folks, we want to know, so what are the results? Can you talk to us a little bit, you mentioned a little bit about on track to graduation. What other measures are important to you in terms of determining success, and how well have you been able to move young people and the overall culture on those measures?
So there's a few collection of measurements that we're doing, and one thing to keep in mind is when we do talk about every decision is through scale. And so we want to develop a way of measuring, evaluating our schools and our own success on a platform that is scalable across the country. And so that there is a level of understanding from a business terminology that we might not go as depth, but every measure that we're looking at is incredibly important. So we start with obviously the behavioral and its attendance and discipline, of course, that does the engagement. But there's also the secondary level, which is transiency within our schools and attrition within our schools. And so are we keeping consistency within our schools? So the way 3DE is right now, we are in 6 different schools. We range from one of the lowest performing schools in Fulton County, which is Banneker High School, to one of the top performing schools in Fulton County, Northview. What we realize is there's going to be a different dynamic. So in what we're going to see in Banneker, which is incredibly important, we were able to see, is are the families staying within that school? And that creates this whole change agent for the community. And so we started to look at, because at the same time, while families were moving around, it used to be they would just go to an extent from an apartment to an apartment. Now, the parents are making a concerted effort. They are still moving at the same rate, but they are moving within the zone to ensure that they're not interrupting their child's learning and their school experience. That is a massive win in our eyes, as well as the community within those areas. From that, we're also looking at measuring on competency. So when we talk about case methodology, we talk about those soft skills. There is a entire data evaluation framework that we work with, a third-party system, around are the students truly understanding, are they developing collaboration, self-direction, innovative thinking, and so we kind of put everything against it, but the whole residual impact of 3DE goes well beyond the 4 years. We're developing a framework to look at it, so in 5 years, did they actually not just matriculate to post-secondary, did they engage in it? Then there's an 8 and a 15 years, because what we really want to see is that this truly is not just about what happens within those 4 years and those 4 walls. Are we driving economic opportunity and mobility?
Great segue. So we talk about economic opportunity and mobility. So the companies that are participating in education, oftentimes we think they should be doing just because they're kind of good corporate citizens. there's no interest like self-interest, and companies have a self-interest in having a more reliable, predictable talent pipeline. Can you talk to me, and I know you're kind of on the edge of this, but I want the audience to kind of be thinking about this, that it's great that you're taking ninth graders, you're changing the culture of the school, they're graduating from high school, I'm sure some of them are going on to college or will go into college, but talk a little bit about how you, in your relationship with the companies, you expect the kind of talent pipeline connection to economic opportunity and mobility to also be affected by what you're doing.
Yeah, so there's the whole level of exposure, which is incredibly important in today's day and age, and it goes back to what you were talking about in terms of the skilled trade positions as well, and creating a new viewpoint on it. So in terms of talent pipeline, not only are we developing these students who can actually present themselves, not just getting, like you were talking about, your 4.0 GPAs and being involved in clubs, but can you actually provide, when you go into these interviews, a portfolio of work that shows that a demonstrative work that you have actually done within a business environment. And then not only that, can you actually articulate that to the person who is interviewing you? Because that is a whole different level, and speak to the challenges that you went through. When it comes to, for the businesses, it also creates for them a different viewpoint on who are the students within these schools. And so it's on a back and forth symbiotic relationship in terms of the students being ready, more prepared for those businesses, but the businesses also being ready and prepared for the students that are coming into the workforce.
Okay, great. Operational questions. I told you we'd probably get a lot of operational questions. So what amount of autonomy do you have if or when you need to remove an employee?
As in a teacher, I assume is what we're getting towards? Yeah. So we fall under all the restrictions and guidelines within the school district. And so, but what is different about this is that because we do have our school site director on site and on location, you have a person who is there day in and day out and can help try and drive change when we need it. And so honestly, up until this point, we've only had one teacher who has left 3DE and the school system at the same time. And the way it goes about is because you have a person who's constantly there and asking and bringing you have to do PLCs, which is a weekly meeting together, not just with your core discipline, but as well as within your cohort. There you have to engage with the businesses, which is asking these teachers to really step up. And any teacher who's really in it for the right reasons, they are willing to step up, because the second you start seeing the engagement from the students and the students seeing that school is much more about the 8 a.m. bell to 3 p.m., all of the teachers are leaning in, and it becomes a different environment. It's not an environment of a lax, you just do what you do. It becomes an environment that everyone would want within their businesses, where we are truly in this as a team and a collaborative force. And when you have a culture like that, it's very simple to feel the outlier. And usually that outlier will then, in a sense, self-direct.
Gotcha. And I think there was a kind of a related question. I think in your expansive answer, you addressed it, which was the training of teachers and making sure they're actually good at what they do here. So hopefully we touched on that enough. If not, if you feel like you wanted to expound upon that a little bit. But case methodology is a different way than kind of curricular. Here's a subject. Take your note pens out. We're gonna do that through there from that standpoint. So that's great.
The only thing I can quickly just get on what we talked about earlier is how does the training work with case methodology, because it is a different way, and so that is something that 3DE provides to the school districts. And so for any teacher within 3DE during the summer as well as during the winter break, the teachers do have to, and they elect to, participate in professional development, which is all around case methodology. And so that's the way that we make sure we're able to bring them along. And then at the same time, because not all teachers come in with the business acumen. Now we do have some who have come in who just came out of the workforce. At the same time, there's a lot of teachers who have not. And so within each of these cases, a core component of it, and an agreement from the school business partners, is they have to be part of that PLC before the case challenge launches and explain it to the teachers, which the teachers are thoroughly enjoying because it gives them a new purview on what is world outside of the education sphere.
And what's great about that too, I think, is, and you guys may already have this on the books, but I'm a huge advocate for externships. I think teachers, rather than spending summers off doing whatever else, they ought to be paid to go out into the workplace. The partners actually see what's going on, what the demands are, and then be able to relate that back in the classroom from that standpoint. But here's another one. How does the funding work with the companies? 3DE Or is this two questions on one? Okay, so, sorry. So how does the funding work with the companies?
Okay. So the company, it comes all through 3DE, and the way it actually works out for 3D, just so you know, is we are able to almost bolt on to the public allocation funding. And so what 3DE really costs is about $450 per student. And so every company, when they invest to be a part of this case challenge, they do. They go from the levels of $25,000 up into, we have, Delta has just signed on to be a $2 million partner to go national with us. But we manage all of the funding. It comes through us, and what we are able to provide back to that is a transparent and substantive way to engage with your business, and that we are ensure that your brand is properly being represented, and that we can actually draw back direct data from your case challenge, what were the results, as well as from the school that you were engaged in, what were the results.
Gotcha. 3DE, is there a fear of constantly coming up with fresh material for case studies?
Yeah, it's an important necessity, though, in today's day and age. We have to continue to stay innovative within our lessons and within the case challenges the students work in. So every single year, we look at the ones that we did the previous year. We make modifications. We work with the companies to do that. But in today's day and age, quickly, kids talk, quiz, share information, and things change so rapidly anymore. You know, we did a case challenge on turbines last year for GE, and so to do another one this year, we had to really change the shift in the message because they have a whole new innovation sorts that they're working on.
All right. So how well do students who are in the 3D program perform on standardized tests such as the SAT, and is there any disadvantage as you perceive it in your innovation model with standardized testing in general?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this is my personal perception. This is not a what 3D stands on. I'm just going to tell you how I feel. I can go both ways on standardized tests. I think there is something there to be able to be said, though, that we can actually look across the board and have some centralized way of monitoring where our students are. It doesn't mean that's the best way or the only way. There should be a whole, just like in a company, you don't monitor a employee success off of one measure. And if you do, that's pretty short-sighted. And so that's how we look at it, or I look at it, I guess I should say. I'm sorry, what was the first part of the question, though?
That was just, do you know how well your kids who've been coming through the 3D program are performing on on the SAT?
Yes, so we have the PSAT so far. So the evaluations come out about a year behind. So right now we have the 2016-27 evaluations. We're about to have 2017-2018. But from Georgia academic milestones as well as all PSAT, our students have outperformed their matched peers on 100% of statistically significant academic milestones. Now, with that said, to be fair, we still have leaps and bounds to go. Outperformance creates a lot of confidence and compelling momentum. We are nowhere near to the level that we know that it meets the needs of our students or the value of who they are.
Can you real quick, which APS schools is 3DE located in?
So yeah, we opened last year at Frederick Douglass High School, and we are in conversations with APS in terms of a replication strategy. Those conversations should come to due diligence pretty soon.
All right, last two. So are there any new cases? I think I just wanted to know about how often the cases come through. And then we had one from a legislator who says, I represent Banneker High School in the legislature. I'm concerned with the low performance. Has your intervention helped to raise the performance level overall? And if not, what else can the legislature do to help?
Yeah, I think overall, if you walk into Banneker High School, I will tell you it is what the principal says, and I truly believe in it, it's a new day at that school. Those students have a new self-belief in who they are, and they are definitely deeply engaged in their education at a level that it was not there 4 years ago. So I highly applaud that school, that leadership, and those teachers and those students. Yeah, their academic performance is improving across the board. But again, with going back to, we are nowhere near what it needs to be done. So what I would say from a legislator perspective, come talk to us. Let's get the word out more to get more partners involved, allow us to continue to grow our capacity and create more resources for our school partners.
All right, thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.